And there we go. I thought you were doing that. Sorry, Mark. We will then, do you want me to repeat everything I've said so far? Then what we will do from there is we will respond to it through our FAQ section on the website, or publish, a series of additional press releases. So we will denote the comments. We just may not be able to react to a few of them tonight. I would ask the committee to obviously follow guidance as much as you want to answer that tonight, in some instances. Any questions? Format? Okay. With that, I will turn it to our finance subcommittee for an update on the project finances.
Thank you, Jason. So the subcommittee consists of the two gentlemen to my left and right, Andrew Fapp, who is chair of the advisory committee, myself, who is chair of the select board, and Mark Davis, who has contributed greatly to this committee with his long knowledge of the parcel, the history, and his background as far as building goes. So it's been a good committee as far as having the right people to do what we are trying to do tonight. So just to refresh everybody's memory, we basically have had two estimates at this point. The first estimate was used to submit what we call the PDP in May to the MSBA. We had a set of estimates that were they were ranges instead of an exact number. Then with more information, the design team has hired an estimator to come in with a second set of estimates, which we're going to talk about tonight, which we use for the second submission, which we call the PSR. Right, Jim?
Yes.
PSR. Lots of acronyms in this world, MSBA world. Let's just start with the May estimate. We also, everybody needs to understand, we started with 12 different permutations of what we could possibly do to solve the area problem. We whittled that down to 3. The MSBA requires you to at least look at 3 in the end, so we looked at 3. We call those in this group B4, C1, and C4. B4 is to take Neary as it is today, completely rehab it and expand it to a 4-grade school. It's B4. C1 is to close Neary that we have today, demolish it, and build a brand new 2-year school on basically the same plot of land. And then C4 is to build a brand new 4-grade school, basically on the same plot, tear it down, brand new school. So that's the 3 choices that we've been looking at since May. The estimator looked at pricing all 3 of those, came back to us last Wednesday with new estimates. We started off in May with the B1, which is the renovation addition. To the B4 being, I'm going to give you the high end of the range, 149 million. C1, which is the new 2-grade school, 109 million. And C4, the new 4-grade school, at 146 million. And these numbers are before the contribution by the state to this project. So the MSBA does have a fund of money that they will agree to use toward a piece of this project. That number we are starting to fine tune now. We kind of got a big idea of what they're going to give us. So it's significant, but the cost is still significant. So we're still talking about a significant out-of-pocket cost no matter which project we choose. Okay, so that's where we were in May. Today, as of last Wednesday, they came back with new numbers. The renovation of Neary and expanding to 4th grade and the new 4th-grade school continue to be estimated at about the same cost. Maybe surprisingly to some, maybe not. So to build a brand new school or to renovate Neary, add 2 more grades, about the same cost. So we basically ran 2 sets of numbers because those 2, B4 and C4, are basically the same cost. And we ran a impact on the town of that scenario. And then we've run an impact on the town of the new 2-grade school. So the numbers that you're going to see tonight are assuming an out-of-pocket bonding or bond amount for the 2-grade school of $64 million. And then for the new 4th-grade school of $84 million. So there's quite an economy of scale going from 2-grade to 4th-grade. You don't double the cost by any stretch of the imagination. Okay. Okay, so Jim Burrows is our lead person at our OPM firm, Stanska, and he is going to share with you a couple slides that kind of summarize what this latest set of estimates has determined.
Thank you. And are you in? Oh, sorry. You know, on your mic when you go in. Yep. I see. You should be all set. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So as Kathy mentioned, we had updated estimates last week. And they're detailed here for each of the options that we walk through, the B4, with a total project cost of 113.6 and the estimated construction cost of 90 million. So the estimated maximum facilities grant of 34 million with the town share of 79.6. So, and just to back up, as the chair alluded to, these are snapshots in time. With all the information that we have now, that is the number that we are carrying right now. The MSBA grant will shift as we go through the process, as we go deeper into the design. But as of today, this hour, these are the numbers. The C1 option is estimated total project cost of 83.1, town share of 63. And then the seat for the 610 enrollment, 113, and estimated town share of 83.4. So there's a couple of drivers for the PDP cost change. One, which I think is probably the most significant, is the reduction in square footage. The school administration, along with the design team and this committee, went through and reassessed some of the square footage. That square footage was reduced. So that was a big driver. Second, we have an estimate with a lot more information than we had at the PDP. So the more information you have, the more you can focus in on the cost. We also walk through all of the soft costs. So the soft costs are all non-construction related costs. During that process, once we understood some of the logistics of what the students would be doing during construction, along with some other factors, we're able to dial those in. So that's everything from the OPM designer fees, the all of their sub-consultants, the potential for having to use modulars, understanding what that cost would be, and moving costs once we understood the logistics. So those are the main drivers. And again, that's where the numbers are right now. One point, just to make sure it's clear, this is the summary from the estimator. And you'll see two columns. This is an estimated construction cost for DBB, which is design, bid, build. So that's a lump sum style contract. The second column is a CM at risk. So that's another contract model.
That decision is going to be further down, probably this fall, we'll have that discussion. So, however, tonight for this discussion, we wanted to be sure that we are carrying the higher numbers so that when we go through that discussion, and when folks make their votes tonight, it's based on that number. So we don't have to go the other direction. And again, we'll have a longer discussion in upcoming meetings on this, but just want to make sure that that was clear. So you'll see it's roughly 6% increase to the CMA risk. CMA risk is typically for large complex projects, which this one is. So it's likely that'll go that direction. But again, just for clarification for the two different numbers. So
Thank you. So just to add a little clarity, given I see an architect sitting in this audience, we have no drawings whatsoever at this point. So these numbers are based literally on a spreadsheet that adds up all the square footage of the rooms, classrooms that the education team have put together, and then added the buffers that you have to have, hallways, bathrooms, etc. So we have no drawings whatsoever. That's the next step once we vote on which project we think should go forward with. So that's why when we say estimate, we really do mean estimate. Okay. So the next thing we did once we got the second set of numbers on Wednesday, we asked Brian Valentine to work with our bond consulting firm to help us figure out what the impact of the two projects would be on town finances for the next 5 years. So fiscal year 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. This project goes forward as we have drawn it out. If we have the town meeting in April, have the vote in May, we are hoping that we would start constructing about a year from then and then be in the new school in the fall of 28. Great. So we took this out to fiscal year 30 to make sure we showed the full impact of the bond being permanently financed, and this is what the debt service is going to be. So that's why we picked fiscal year 30 as our end of the 5-year projection. So Brian, do you want me to do this? Do you want to do some of this?
Sure. Up to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, what there?
He did all the work. Anyone that is familiar with town finances know what this is. This is what we do every year when we do the budget. So this time we've done it for this year 25, which is the budget that got passed last March, and then shown the next 5 years. So we did it for both $64 million of debt and $84 million of debt. And then over to the right, we're showing what we believe the impact is going to be on the town budget, knowing what we know today about the town budget, which is not everything. The other thing to keep in mind, there's another big project that we have incorporated here because we know people care about it, which is the extension of the library. So library is in the process of applying for a grant that they're going to hear about in September to get into the state process to substantially increase the size of the library. They think that project is going to cost $21 million, of which about $9 million will be paid for by the state. So we have factored that into this projection also to make sure people know that that has not been left out. That's the only other big project that we know about in the next 5 years. We've got some road work to be done. There's some projects there, but the library is the big one that we want to make sure got incorporated and didn't get left out because a lot of people care about that. Okay, so if you stay over to the right for a second, the 4.04% you see, of course, that's a fiscal year 25. So that has nothing to do with the schools. That's this year that we're in right now. That tax rate's being set as we speak. We'll know in a couple of months exactly what that turned out to be, but we think it's going to be about 4% year-over-year tax increase. Okay, so nothing to do with Mary there. Next year, fiscal year 25, soon to 26, there is a tiny bit of this project in there, but not much. So the reason that was going up, it's for other things. It's not Mary, it's for the library, it's for other things. So that 11.51% projected increase year-over-year is not the school. Next year it is. So 9.79% is there because of the NERI debt, as is the next year. And then at that point, it's pretty much fully into the budget. So the next 2 years are sort of normal increases, 5%, and then I think last one's 5% too. Okay, if you look at the last line on the screen here, you'll see what we think the debt service is going to be on the bigger project, the 4-grade school. So it's almost $5 million a year, which is by far the biggest debt we've ever had in this town. Not that the building we're sitting in is about $20 million. So this is 4 times that. Okay, so that's the bigger school, 4-grade school. Now let's go to the next one, which is the 2-grade school. So same process, same numbers over here. So Andrew, can you just scroll down? So 11, 9, 9, 5, and 4. So the shocking thing about this is I expected those numbers to be a lot further apart than they are. They're pretty close. So I've got everybody's got them lined up next to each other on the desk up here so they can see how close they are. So the difference between the 2-year school and the 4-year school, tax-wise, is not large. It's not as large as I sure thought it would be. So you can make a conclusion from that as far as what you think about the overall tax impact. It's a big tax impact, but the difference between the 2 schools is not that big. So that's where we've ended up, committee, as far as what we think is going to do to our taxes. And again, not all of this is the school. So if you go to the next, so now if you look at this one, this shows what for both projects, what the actual cost of servicing the near debt would be standalone to the average residential tax bill. The average residential tax bill in Southborough right now is based on a cost of almost $900,000, believe it or not. So $128, $586,000, $1,200, and down here, the smaller project. So that is the piece of the overall tax bill that relates to just servicing the nearing debt.
Thank you.
Right.
I'm gonna clarify one thing, just so everyone is aware. Nothing was sitting great, but when Jim was talking about the reductions to square footage and some of the where we've been and where we are now, I think it's really important to note there was educational visioning that, including members of the community, that occurred in and around January, February timeframe. That's when the school administration, in conjunction with the Neary Building Committee, came up with I'll call it wants list, not the needs. Like that was the true everything that everyone could think about under the sun. Where do we start? That's what went into the PDP. However, how we've gotten from those numbers to the numbers where we're at today, both from a square footage and ultimately a cost perspective, it started with the school administration revisiting each of those spaces and figuring out what they had to have to meet today's educational needs, but also with a vision to the future. It then came to this committee, and there was a series of conversations back and forth, looking at funding formulas, making sure we weren't building classrooms that were too large, that we disqualify ourselves from certain reimbursements, but at the same time, making sure that the classrooms were of adequate size and storage to meet what the educators knew they needed. So we've done a balancing act already. There is no doubt, no matter where we go, we move this forward, that balancing act will continue as numbers become more precise, the feedback from the community comes in. But there's 2 legs of this that we always have tried to balance. It's the educational needs of the community now, but also into the future. The other thing that I just would point out for benefit of the committee, and welcome Arrow Street to chime in, is one of the important decisions that we are going to make here tonight financially, right? If you're just basing the decision purely off finances, is none of the numbers that Kathy and the finance subcommittee presented related to a 2-grade school acknowledge what, if anything, would have to be done to Finn in the future from a renovation perspective. I think we all know the building next door to us, other than roofs and basic repairs that you would do to a 20-year-old building, is not really what we need to be worrying about right now. But Finn is a 1960s infrastructure. It has certainly benefited from renovation in addition in and about 20 to 25 years ago. But the core of that building is actually older than the Neary School. So I asked Arrow Street that if it was relevant to anyone of the committee to at least have an understanding of a very high level, what would be needed and when to Finn if we vote on the 2-grade school, meaning that Finn would still be in operation as an elementary school for the youngest of our students. So Katie and Larry, are there anything during the committee would like to hear that in terms of helping to evaluate between a 2 and a 4-grade school? We're all looking at you, so is there any just kind of highlights that you want to read or present anything?
Sure, and we're happy to go through in a little more detail. So we took a tour of the building 2 weeks ago with Keith, and thanks for that. Welcome. Where Keith? Oh, you moved. I did. And as you say, it's in good condition from a maintenance standpoint, but a lot of work to be done. And probably many people know that there was a program this summer to put in new air conditioning units. The building has a moisture issue so that individual window units have been put in, I believe, all the classrooms, if I remember correctly. That's intended to help mitigate the moisture. There is some various ways that that's being felt throughout the school. There's reports of some of the floor tiles coming up. You can see some of the ceiling tiles having leaks, some of which are from the roof and some from the moisture. And the basic systems, if I remember correctly, so it was done in 1999-ish. So the 25 years-ish, we are reaching the end of most of those systems. We took a quick look using the same methodology that the MSBA request for a base repair, as they called it. And if you guys remember, we did that for the Neary School and Woodward School, saying what would it take to really replace the systems so that it would be good for another 25 to 30 years. In our case, looking at insulating the outside walls, replacing the roof, because in this case, you would want to think about sort of long-term operational costs and efficiency, and redoing the interior of the building to bring the finishes up to standard. Again, in the MSBA's world, it's sort of as if it were new, but it's sort of a major renovation. What we did not include in that analysis was program updates. And again, following the MSBA's methodology, the existing classrooms to remain, existing gym, cafeteria, all those things to remain virtually as is. Number came to be similar to what we saw for Neary and for Woodward, about 51 million, if I'm looking at the screen correctly.
In today's dollars or future dollars?
Those are assuming June of 26, which is the numbers we had available. So you would then want to say, okay, or would we do this in 5 years or 10 years? So you'd want to escalate those numbers to everyone's best guess as to what that meant.
So number north of that.
Number north of that, yes. But it was the best available information based on our estimator looking out essentially 2 years, as opposed to trying to say, well, what are construction numbers in 10 years? And those are virtually impossible to predict. But it was using the same methodology and saying, okay, from there you could project out 5 to 10 years and say, if we were thinking in 10 years of redoing the Finn School, what's the best guess of what $51 million would buy you at that point?
And we need to make clear that what we just saw on the 5-year projection does not include $51 million for Finn at all.
That's what, yeah.
Yeah, so therefore, if you're again trying to compare the 2 and the 4, the cost of doing a new 2-year school, if you've got to spend $51 million of Finn, will far exceed the cost of the 4-year school if you close, depending on what you do with Finn. But I assume we're not going to spend $51 million of Finn if we do something else with Finn. All right?
Yeah, so then the flip side of this is if the committee votes to advance a 4-grade option at Neary, that would make the Finn School far more empty than it is now, right? It would be up to the superintendent and the team to figure out with the school committee how that building should be used for educational reasons and or what then could be turned back to the town as a whole. What the town would do with that building is outside the scope of what any of us are here to think about or consider tonight. There was a prior study done of what could happen, encapsulating the requests of recreation, seniors, and the library. And that is likely going to be used in conjunction with whatever the library thinks about as they move forward. Again, that is outside of all of our purview. To the extent that we do advance a 4th grade option, it certainly would then need to be a teaming exercise between this committee and wherever the select board and advisory want to go with that, as well as capital. But again, that is outside of the purview of this discussion. There have been numbers floated out there up to 14 million to convert Finn for community center purposes. I would say, as the person that chaired that particular committee, that would be subject to a lot more work. We've seen 10s and 20s, $30 million come off of this project just by due diligence, careful consideration. So I think it'd be irresponsible to quote that as the number that it would take, because there are user groups that aren't very well represented by this committee right now that would want to have a say in that and should have a say in that. So again, the plan, right, if this were to go forward as 4th grade, would need to have consideration of what that would be, because that's a natural question. That is not for us to answer tonight, other than outline that there is a possibility for many different uses that could happen there, subject again to the feedback of the community. Okay, so there are questions on the project finances from the committee. But right.
It's a minor question, and I'm really surprised at how close these numbers are all the way down between the 2th grade and the 4th grade. It looked like the last year, and I'm not sure when I compared them, and I think it's at the FY 2030. It's not a lot, but it looked like that was actually larger on the 2th grade and 4th grade. Am I actually looking at that correct? Not much.
Yeah, it's not much.
But everything else kind of just followed the pattern of a little less. But maybe there's something else going on there.
There's
Okay.
And the debt service is a little bit more, believe it or not. The debt service for the 2nd grade school goes up a little bit that year, while the 4th grade school stays flat. So that's a little bit of it, right?
Okay.
So yeah, there's other things going on there. So you're right. That's what you have concluded. At that point, the debt is baked in. So at that point, we've gone up, we're here, and we should expect normal increases from that point on. The debt's in. So it doesn't keep going up. You get up, to that level, and then you go up hopefully a little bit of time like we normally do.
Thank you.
Other questions from the committee on finances? All right, the final thing I'm going to say for the benefit of the public on the finances is the numbers that have been presented here tonight do not include the operational costs of where we go, right? In terms of building, right? We build a green building. The cost to operate that building should be less than what we see now, regardless of the size of the building. So I just think that's important to denote. In the operating budgets, right, that you've presented, Kathy, just assume an average percentage increase to the schools. For our transition years, we're gonna have, we've at least the school committee has accepted the recommendation of the superintendent, just so everyone's on the same page, that NERI would not be operational as the school for the 2 years that any sort of construction would be occurring, which means the physical plant operating costs would not be part of our town budget as we move forward for those 2 years. So it's not an insignificant cost. Again, it's the physical plant, not the labor costs. That's an important distinction that has been made in multiple public meetings at this point. So those are not reflected in any of the numbers we've seen. So that would be only a benefit as we move forward. Okay. Yes, Roger.
Well, you mentioned operational costs, and you talked about the fact, well, potentially green buildings, so it's likely gonna cost less to operate. But isn't there even more to that? Because if you're operating a 4-grade green building, you're comparing that to what you would be doing by operating a two-grade green building, and then wouldn't the total of that also?
Yeah, we gotta be cognizant that that will just shift from the school budget to the town budget on the fin side if it was municipal. But
It's to the taxpayers.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's kind of left pocket, right pocket to the same end result, but you get at least the benefit of 2 grades, regardless of where we go here. Okay, so I'd like to hear from the committee on where you're at, which then may frame maybe some of the public comment that we hear before taking a vote. So I can go from one side of the table to another, or I can just, well, unless someone wants to volunteer where they want to go. And I will be skipping myself regardless of what order you go, get to go at the end. So Andrew, you want to start?
Sure. I still think the C1 square footage wise,
Can you just for everyone's benefit, just make sure everyone's aware what C1 is?
C1 is the 305, the 2-grade configuration new. And I'm just gonna talk new and new. I think, as Jason said, the add rent out to Neary is as expensive and new, so it doesn't make much sense to keep the frame of that building with all the issues it has. The square footage and some of the costs there, I think, are still a little bit inflated. So I think there should be a little bit more of a gap between the two. I understand the concerns about what would we have to do to Finn in a few years or 10 years, or probably more like 15. And it might make more sense to do it now. My concern there is we're not getting rid of Finn. The idea would probably be to turn it into a community center, which then is going to have incremental costs on top of that. So it's a little bit, it's a bigger pill to swallow. But I do, agree that there is economies of scale of doing the larger school. I do have some concerns that we have a significant amount of additional square footage in classrooms in our existing 4 schools that we would be reducing a little bit of our buffer by going to a 4-grade configuration. We have 3 or 4 classrooms basically at each one of the schools, a room that we'd be giving up a little bit of that to have with this enrollment, but I think that can be solved with doing some foresight when we get to schematic design about, kind of envisioning where an addition would go in the future possibly, and stubbing out some of the mechanicals, things like that, so that we could add on to it at not a significant expense, but I think that's something that we could kind of cross off at that. And we have a lot of flex spaces that if we needed to switch a foreign language classroom to a regular classroom and switch to cart-based education or something like that, you could do it. But I'm a little bit torn between the two right now. I want to hear what everybody else has to say.
Kathy?
So, I did a 180-degree about face, when we got these numbers on Wednesday. I thought that I was going to go for the new 2-grade school, although I felt quite guilty about it. I know the education team really prefers a 4-grade school for good reason. Buses, the Campbellsville, let one less transition of kids, which apparently is pretty significant as far as the impact on parents, children, teachers, the ability for 4 grades to collaborate. So I wanted to get to the 4-grade school, but this cost was just so big, this project was so big compared to anything we've ever incurred in Southburg. And we're a small town, 10,000 people. It was just, I couldn't get there. I'm a finance person by heart. And I didn't think I could get there. Then when I saw the numbers, how close they were, there was just no purpose. So to me, we're going to get the 4th-grade school for almost the cost of the 2-grade school. So once I understood the impact of the 2 new sets of estimates on the budget for 5 years, I swung the other way. So now I do support the 4th-grade school, but as a member of the select board, I can't overlook then what happens to Finn. So I've started thinking about that, and if we do the 4th-grade school, close Finn, I think that we can figure out Finn in a way that doesn't add another huge cost to the budget. for a while, we can do things incremented, like we did at the senior center. We've done that slowly over time. 21 Highlands slowly over time. So I am also advocating that we take it very slow as far as spin goes. I think we can use it right away. So I had to resolve that in my mind too. I just can't, in my mind, I couldn't leave that off. So I am depending on what everybody else says. This is one case I think we need to try to maybe all be on the same page. I would vote for tonight the 4th grade new school.
I'm just going to go backwards a bit and just give a little history, and then it'll tell you where I'm coming from. I've been involved in the schools since the early 80s. Both my kids went through the schools. My daughter teaches now at the high school. Neary at the time was a 4th grade school. And I saw it with my kids. They went to Finn for 3 grades, 2 grades, I can't remember. 4 grades at Neary, and then they went to Woodward for junior high school. And that was it. We had 3 schools in town, and they were utilized that way. I see it now. I have a grandson that's going into the schools, and he was over at Woodward this year. And I have seen now the 2-year transition model with my grandson. And every other year, other than kindergarten, where it was COVID year, so we'll ignore kindergarten. But every year, he's either moving into the school or moving out. And you've got that year of transition, and for a younger kid, it isn't an easy time. There's a lot of uncertainties. What's the new school going to be like? Do I know the teachers? And I kind of sit there and say, never went through this with my kids. But it is that 2-year transition, one school to the next school to the next school, which just makes it tough. So I've kind of seen that grow. The Neary site, I got on this committee because I've always been concerned with the site as a whole. And that we really needed to dig in and make sure this is actually a site where we could continue to utilize the school. I pictured it as a bowl. And we're at the bottom of the bowl. We're surrounded by wetlands. And on one side, we have a former landfill. So we have done an extreme amount of due diligence, to make sure what's going on with the landfill. And we've actually added in these numbers some engineering controls so that we protect ourselves from any groundwater issues or issues with gas from the landfill. To me, that is the absolute most critical thing we need to recognize as a town. That these issues are oftentimes not found until it's too late. So if I set up a barrier that I just was not convinced for the longest time that this is where we should put it school until we had the evidence otherwise. 25 years ago, we had a little stream that runs between Trottier and Neary. When we did Trottier, that was an intermittent stream. It wasn't classified as a stream. In 25 years, it's now classified as a river. It's totally changed in 25 years. Suddenly, we're dealing with a 200-foot setback from that river. And I think our design team started talking with conservation, but we quickly moved the school back to where it is with Neary. We discovered high groundwater. In some areas of the site, groundwater is only a foot below the surface. We discovered thin topsoil and spongy soil. And I noticed that with my kids in Little League, you'd walk across the field and you kind of have a bounce to the field. And I never had that explained to me until now. We discovered where the fields are, there's unsuitable fill to build a building, and we were at one point looking at significant digging out soils down 5 feet, dewatering, making sure the water wasn't there while we put in new fill. It pushed us back to putting it back where Neary is. And we've got our fingers crossed. We still don't know what the fill is like underneath Neary. We won't know that until we start digging into the foundation and really determining. So my role really has more been, we need to figure out the wetlands, we need to figure out the landfill, we need to figure out the impacts of that stream, we need to figure out 100-year storm or even 1,000-year storm to make sure we're setting that school at a proper height, because we had 200-year storms last summer. The groundwater is not going to change. We're going to be in a long period of high groundwater, so we need to make sure the school is set up so that we don't have that impact. To me, I concluded early on that I didn't want to see us renovate Neary. I didn't want to see us keep any portion of Neary for the mere fact that it might not be at the right grade. And we really still need to know what's underneath that school for the next 50 years. When that was built in 1972, the 1973 Wetlands Protection Act was not even in existence. So whatever fill was put underneath there, it was probably wetlands all through there. So we're dealing with issues that are typical of a building this age. Secondly, education has changed in the last 50 years. A school today is not like the school we had 50 years ago. And thank God not near the school I went to 7 years ago. Education has evolved. I've seen a lot of neat things going on and how the spaces are utilized. And I wanted to make sure for the next 50 or 60 years, we have a school that meets or exceeds the educational needs of our students and the community. Lastly, on the, I'm a proponent of green energy. One of the things I've always was concerned with school budgets is the amount of cost that it takes to maintain these buildings and operate these buildings. And with the security issues that we're now concerned with the health issues we're now concerned with the energy issues that we're now concerned with moving forward, we need to make sure that we're taking advantage of everything we can to move at least this school forward. So for, I think all of those reasons, but the biggest that the site can work, and we'll continue to test that as we go through the design. And what my kids went through, I am a proponent of the brand new 4-school.
Mark, Roger?
Well, it's easy to go after the first 3 because I can sort of say I agree with Andrew and agree with Kathy and I agree with Mark on the different reasons, but just briefly, not long ago, I was right on the fence. The main reason I was on the fence was because of cost. There are a few things I'm going to say next, put me on the 4-grade school side, but you know, looking at the cost was scary. And I still have some of the same concerns and identified that he had about, you know, there's just still some things we don't know about what the taxpayers are going to end up paying to deal with Finn if it's not a school, but it's something else. So there's some unknowns. I also think that there's some unknowns as far as the operating of a new 4-grade school. I think it's more likely that it might be a little better than we project. As far as cost, and I don't know if, what we're gonna end up with doing, and if we do go with a 4-grade school, I don't know what that's gonna be like. But, I was really astounded at how close these numbers came in between a 2-grade and a 4-grade school. So that's compelling. And just want to mention, Mark's comments about the site. And, Bonnie, I'm going to shout out to you, Bonnie Faniff. She really working on this committee. I started to get a couple emails from Bonnie. You guys check this, let's check that. Of course, I'm as far away from an expert on site as anyone, but Mark soon, was presented with some of these concerns, and I thought it was really very helpful that somebody would, sort of make us ask some questions, and I think we would have asked maybe if not all, most of them, but still, it was really very helpful. So let me talk about a couple of things. A couple of other things. I think, and I'm going to vote for the 4-grade school. So I think when we talk about the educational value, I think not only do we, if we're going to, there's going to be a lot of things in this building, if you will, that enables the district to provide certain things to the students in that building that we can't provide today. And, to do it just for 2 grades, I think would be a little short-sighted when you can have 2 more grades getting the same value of being in that building and taking advantage of, some of the benefits of the building. So yes, the transition every 2 years, I don't think you find anybody that would raise their hand and say, yeah, that works out well. There's some other things. We talk about busing. I don't think anybody's mentioned that we can improve upon if we have 1 4-grade school there. And I think what that would turn out to be, it's almost like a campus. So now you've got not just 4th and 5th, and then the middle school down the road, but you'd actually have all but 2 grades in almost a campus situation. So I think kids would be familiar with the area, the geography, etc. I really do think that there's probably operational savings that we haven't projected yet, if you just think about it. I think that's gonna be a benefit to the community. So it's kind of my checklist, and I am supporting the 4-grade school.
Denise?
I'm not sure that everybody knows the methodology, but the state building assistance program assigns percentages to towns. And you have over 300 cities and towns in Massachusetts that are looking for the same dollars. My fear would be if we went to a 2-school scenario, when we went back to the state again in 10 years, they're not going to be looking too kindly on Southborough when they had the opportunity to solve our problem. We would probably not get funded. Whatever that proportion is, it's better than nothing. And again, you have towns that, because of their demographics, they get 60%. Our ratio is less, but it's still an amount of money that we will be able to secure. And I don't think in 10 years that the state will be lining up quickly to help Southborough again. So that would be my number one concern about when Finn becomes useless and in need of big repair. I don't think we'd be able to go back to that. But secondly, there'll be increased cost to put up another school. And again, I can't agree more wholeheartedly about the fact that I don't like the fact that kids are moving every 2 years. I know it's educationally sound. We have an opportunity now to correct that situation. And again, my fear is that we would not be getting assistance again from the state in a mere 10 years. So I would be in favor for grade school tonight.
Thank you, Denise. Chris?
I'm in agreement, with everything that was said here today. I'm in agreement with the 4th grade school as well. I think with anybody who's had children that go to both schools, one logistically trying to pick up a child at Finn, a child at Woodward in the afternoon with the buses and everything, it's very tough on everyone. The transition's a big thing. I feel like as soon as they get familiar with the school, they're going and they move into another school. Denise, I think Kathy, you hit the nail on the head with Finn. I think once the students are out of the building, put that cost aside to remodel Finn, whatever happens with it can be done in a phased approach once the children are out. And I don't see doing this major construction without incorporating a 4th grade school. You're putting all the legwork in to build the 2th grade school. The infrastructure is going in. If you set it up for future build out with the 2 grades, who knows when that will happen? We lose our potential funding from the state. Costs are going to be higher down the road to do it. We're putting in, based on the MSBA recommendation, the state's recommendation, the highest energy efficient mechanical systems from overall operating costs. I don't see that increasing to go to a 4th grade school because you still have to do everything for the 2 grade school. I'm sold on the 4th grade.
Thank you. And at the risk of potentially repeating a few things, I'm going to try to avoid that, but I've seen the transitions. It's tough, even for children that can easily transition and accommodate. It's very tough. And from an educational perspective alone, just looking at that in isolation, that's a very compelling argument for grade school. In addition, when you look at the decisions that were made 20 to 25 years ago, probably 30 years ago, by the time the decisions were made 30 years ago, and the construction occurred over a time period, NERI was not really part of that, other than some very small amount of work that was done with some modular classrooms and other mechanicals in that building. So we have not invested in a school in this town other than basic mechanicals in a 25-year time period. What we did invest in was the building we're all sitting in. I was part of that process. And at the same time, our neighboring community in Northborough was going through the same process. They haven't brought their process for a fire station only, not a fire station or police station, but a fire station only to town meeting yet. They're close. We paid $20 million, and that's rounding up, for this building. We did send some land acquisition costs in addition to that, which are related to the golf course and the parcel of land. Northborough is looking at over 2 times that amount 5 years later. So even if you don't believe the numbers that Larry and Katie are mentioning of what would be required to fin from a school, you want to have them take 25% of it. Escalation alone is going to, you don't have to be good with numbers or finances to know that the decision 25 to 30 years ago, with all due respect to all that were involved with that, partly created where we're at today. We have a chance to change the course of how Southborough wants to think about our elementary schools, or we can continue down the path that has been charted for many years. We've heard at some point in time from Mark, the town did have 2 elementary schools and a middle school. At some point, we went to 3. I spent way too much time with the school administration team, Kathy, and former school committee members, Sarah Martin, on the enrollment. Our enrollment has been static for 20+ years. We know there are potential changes with MBTA communities, other zoning changes that could occur. They're not enough to change the overall dynamic of anything we're going to decide here tonight. And I believe Andrew mentioned it earlier, is part of whatever plan we come up with is going to have contingency for how you could add in the future. We need to add. The nice thing as we've gone through this whole process is no one has disputed the enrollment projections. That's usually, you look at our neighboring communities that have been through this, that's usually where a lot of the discussion occurs. we have good data around that. We're not building a school that's gonna have 20 empty classrooms. We're not building for 50 years from now under what if scenarios. We're building on what we would know today. And so with that, I'm at a fourth grade option, as you can probably tell from my comments. But also would acknowledge the fact that we still have work to do if this is the direction that we do go. Because as anyone knows, a process is iterative. Look at the steps we've taken just in the past couple of weeks, in the past couple of months. I imagine you would have had very different comments here tonight. Just hearing from what the committee members have said to date. If we had continued the process, continued to sharpen the pencil and end up where we're at tonight, know that if this is what we proceed with, I'm firmly committed, and I'm sure I speak for the rest of the committee, that we're not going to stop from looking for the best possible solution for the town, both from a cost perspective, but also making sure we measure that with the educational feedback we continue to get from the school administration. So with that, that's where I'm at. Want to see if the committee has any final comments before we open it up to public comment. Mark?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment that any of these scenarios that we have on the table do not include the students being at Neely School during the construction. One of the things we did going forward, and with the help of the administration and the school committee, we have in place a transition plan. So no matter what the outcome is, the day we start construction, the kids have been transferred back through that transition plan to our two other schools. It may be a bit of a hardship for a couple of years. There's a need for modulars at both Ben and Woodward, and that's in the budget. But I want to thank the school committee and the administration for going through that process. Because I was kind of getting loud at the meeting saying, I don't want the kids there. I don't want the kids going to school in a construction zone. We did it 25 years ago at Algonquin. And that's high school kids. And it was difficult. And it was a longer project than it probably should have been. And one of the ways for us to keep the budget under control is to be efficiently constructing the building. And that's not working around existing buildings that are being used. So we've taken the hard step of deciding that whatever happens here, we need to move the kids out and then move them back when the project's complete. And that just, it saves a lot of construction, and it keeps the safety issue and the education issue, you know, back where it belongs in the existing schools. But I just wanted to make that point.
Thank you. Go ahead, Archie.
I always have an extra comment.
Go ahead.
So a lot of people have worked really hard to date, and there's still a lot of work to do. Certainly the people on this committee have the you know, our consultants, I guess we'll say, owners, project manager, and the designers also. But I think that the most recent step almost deserves a little extra you know, I guess recognition, because when you take a look at, you know, talking about getting the numbers down and still maintaining the educational level that we want to have in the administrations worked really hard to do that, and the finance subcommittee has worked really hard also. I mean, and it's this subcommittee I'm not on. Okay, I don't feel bad about giving them a shout out. I wish there was another subcommittee I'm not on, but I think I'm on the others, right? But there's still gonna be work going forward, hard work. But I really was impressed by, you know, the team effort between the administration and finance to get us to a spot that I didn't think we'd get to. I really did. And this is, I didn't think we'd get to it a week and a half ago. So, thanks to efforts of both those groups.
Thank you, Roger. Right, Andrew?
I think, yeah, that dagger, Roger, the amount of space we left in the last few weeks in terms of where we come with the numbers, the square footage, and whittling it down. Now with Roger, when we were looking at $150 million school, I just couldn't for the life of me see how this town could pull that off. Now that we whittled it down, kept the educational, visioning, and this just came with efficient and sharpened our pencils and worked with Jim and Katie and Larry and everybody for putting up with all of our questions and going line by line in the estimator spreadsheets. I'm sure they're sick of us. But I think that it just shows how far we've come, how comfortable we are with the numbers and kind of where we ended up that they're this close. So let's thank everybody for the work on that.
Thank you, Andrew. All right, so for public comment, we're gonna let folks in the room go first and then online. So if you're online are gonna want to speak, you can raise your hand now. We'll get to you momentarily, depending upon the level of comment in the room. So if you do have comment in the room, I'd ask you to raise your hand, introduce yourself and give us your address before speaking, and then try to keep it to 3 minutes. I'm not gonna time unless we really have to. So Bonnie, you want to start?
Bonnie Fan of 179 Middle Road. It's just, I'm sorry, it's a quick question. I think the concern in the community is we're not hearing from one voice. There's a lot circulating. We're looking at an option for a 4th grade school with 609 students. It'd be nice to know what the student population is today so that we know that you're building for the future in the school. And the other thing is, I did a brief look at my street on Middle Road to Mount Hickory. It's a very small street, very stable street. There's 39 homes. Of the 39 homes, 19 of them are owned by individuals 65 or older. They're 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom homes. And in the projections, I know we're looking at Madison Place or zoning changes or anything else. I've been very concerned about the fact we could be taxing people out of their homes, moving outside of South Shore. I've supported every school in this town, voting in favor and closed out 3 of them. So I understand the process, but there is a little bit of fear out there for individuals that live alone that are going to be picking up this tax burden. And I really hate to see down the road budgets starting to be cut and the school committee's budget being cut because it's a bottom line budget, unlike some of the others. But there's a risk there also. So it's just a cautionary note from me. But I'd like to know what the population today is compared to what we're building for.
Do you have any fingertips, Greg, or do you want a couple of minutes to come back?
I don't need it tonight, but I thank you.
He's got it memorized, is what he
Okay.
said.
So, at Woodward, the population is 270 students.
Less, so, excuse me, the year that we're going into, yes, about 270.
And then Neary is 282 students.
282, what was Woodward?
Like around 270.
Yeah, about 260, 270.
And then Finn right now is at 232 without preschool.
Without pre-K?
Pre-K, I believe there are approximately 60 plus students in pre-K, Southbrook pre-K.
Thank you.
Other comments in the room?
Rob Lawrenson, 132 Marlborough Road. Jason, are you able to share any results from the most recent survey or any recurring maybe themes that came up that might be beneficial for the audience?
Yeah, so cost. So cost is the theme. I think I spoke to this a little bit earlier in my I'll call my preamble, and I'll give you the results that we have to date. We didn't have an opportunity. Most people, I don't think, had the right education to answer the survey because we didn't have the right numbers. We had huge ranges, right? When we put this out last week, because that's what we had when we put the survey out. So, with that being said, there was over 40% in favor of 4-grade school, about 35% for a 2-grade school, and 24 for nothing.
And any, what, other than cost, was there any recurring?
I would say I mean, I could read, there was 125 comments, that was on 395 responses.
Okay.
A lot, most didn't have comments.
Okay.
I would say the general theme was cost.
Okay.
And, use some words about the condition of Neary that would be inappropriate for me to say in a public meeting, and basically saying why this wasn't done already.
Okay.
So there's a balancing act. And I think the important part of this is, there was some feedback given to us about that only school age parents answered it. Only about just over 60% were school age parents. So 40% of that either represents people that aren't even in the district yet, or community members that have moved on from the school system. Either they don't have kids, or their kids are outside of the public schools.
And the only other comment that I would make, Bonnie, to what you said, I mean, I've got a lot of working years left, and the tax burden impact on me is, I mean, you're looking at potentially those numbers, if I'm not, it's $5,000 over the next.
Right.
I mean, that's real money for anybody, not just, so it's, I think, I hear and I appreciate your comment. And I would just echo that's it's a big number, it's a lot of money, and I know this committee and nobody's probably happy about the bill, but
That's a very true
it
statement.
is what it is, I think. And to Jason, I hear what you're saying. I mean, mistakes were made in the past, right or wrong. People, you didn't know what you didn't know back then. So now we're burdened with this problem now, and we have to unfortunately address it now. I'm just very concerned as a citizen of this town, what else is coming? I mean, I know you said the library, but it's not for this forum, but I'll say it anyway. I mean, our roads are a mess. You're gonna have to deal with thin. I mean, there's any number of other things that are gonna come up. We're a 10,000 population town, so I'm concerned, but we have to address the schools. That's it.
Thanks, Rob. And way back.
Yeah, Stan, Michelle, 7 School Street. 2 questions, and I have to say I'm probably in support of the bigger school as well, but to Bonnie's comment about the amount of seniors in town and the amount of houses that don't have any children in them, because it seems like there's this big block of residences in town that just don't have any kids. Is that all considered and factored into what's going to happen in the next 20 or 30 years, or even the next 5 to 10 years, as the seniors either leave their homes for one reason or another, or the population changes to a greater degree with younger families. The second question, my kids went through the schools here, and I'm not discouraging the four grade school, but there was a trade-off between the fact that the multiple schools were more inconvenient in terms of getting to them and so forth, but the student population was much smaller, and the kids, to some extent, felt safer in a school that only had 200 students in it versus a school that has 400 to 500 students. That's a pretty big school. And to the extent that the younger students are a little bit intimidated by the older students, if you will. I mean, there's a big difference between a first grader and a fourth grader in terms of maturity and size. And again, I'm in support of the bigger school, but I had questions in those 2 things.
So the first piece I'll answer in terms of how the enrollment data. So that was a document we signed about 2 years ago as a community. It was ultimately signed by the select board. We had two different demographic studies done. One by a company called RLS Demography, which is what we based our final conclusions on. And one from NESDEC, who more commonly see in Massachusetts. And with our school system, and it's regularly updated, I think, just through our normal process. The one thing that was eye-opening to me that sat on that subcommittee that looked at the enrollment is fertility rates, was the main driver of some of those conclusions. People are having less kids. So even if you have transitions out of the community where you have a house that had no school-age children, oftentimes, again, this isn't right, you have one or two versus it used to be three. Now, there are so many different iterations you could take this, but fertility rates were a main driver of that, as well as birth rates, was the other part of how many children people are deciding to have. So even if you kind of look at, we did that work during COVID, I think it was probably the best time period to look at it. We all know what happened in this community during COVID. There was a ton of turnover, right, in the houses, right? Houses were selling at a premium, they weren't even hitting the market, right? That was a lot of people moving out that had no school-age children. And guess what happened? Our enrollment data, yeah, it fluctuates 1, 2, 3, 4 per grade here and there, but we didn't see a shift in actual numbers coming in, even despite all of that. And even, I don't know, Greg, if you have it handy, you can actually look at even kindergarten over the last 2 to 3 years. It varies between 1 to 2 classroom sizes. If you use about, on average, 20 kids per class, that's what it takes to move the needle in terms of approximately how much space. So none of us have a crystal ball, but we have about 20 to 25 years worth of data, and a lot has gone on economically during those times. But I think the biggest thing that we learned, and Kathy was part of that subcommittee, and she just left, was the growing senior population. My eyes certainly opened to that. I knew I had all the data from Pam and the team at the senior center, but that was part of all of that. On your second part, I don't know if the superintendent wants to just react at all to the number of students in a building, how you think about safety and synergies and the like.
We've given it a lot of thought. Obviously, we're going from smaller schools to a much larger school. We've been working closely with our architects to make sure that we design a school that has the small school feel within it. So if you look at the design, you'll see a grade 2, 3 wing and a grade 4 or 5 wing. And we've really tried to create spaces that make it feel like a school within a school for those students. So it is something we're considering and factoring in the design.
Thank you. Are there any other comments in the room? Yes.
Hi, my name's Catherine Nordstrom. I'm at 14 Meeting House Lane. I am still choking on this number. I thought that there was a decimal that I missed. I almost fell off my chair. I just want everyone to know that was a really shocking number for a small town. And again, I appreciate everything you've done. I know this has not been easy. I know we need a school. My question is, has anyone looked to like the Massachusetts government for any aid or grants for schools?
We're gonna get about 25% of the cost from the state, that's part, so we're part of a process with the state where they do contribute about 25% of the cost based on our current projections to this. So the 64 and 84 are net of what we expect to receive from the state.
Okay, then I'm sorry, I'm not a numbers person, so they are going to give the 25% and the numbers that you're asking of us is what we have to give.
That's correct. And believe me, we were shocked too. I mean, construction costs in the municipal world are just high. You've got to conform to all these prevailing wage laws. And so, you know, we're talking $1,000, $1,100, $1,200 a square foot to build a new school.
Thanks.
Other comments in the room? All right, does anyone online have any comments or questions? So you raise your hand, we're seeing none right now. Go ahead, Patty.
Hi, Patricia Burns, Fiore 10 Winter Street. I think it might have been Kathy that was discussing the tax rates. Maybe it was Jason, the tax rates and how these would be affected. But I just want to clarify, the tax rates you showed only included the debt service for the school and not any additional budget increases based on all other municipal costs. Is that correct?
No, so. Patty, we try to project for the next 5 years what we think the budget's going to grow by. So no, this is a normal projection of everything, not just the debt. So we have increased operating costs like we normally do, 4 or 5%. We've got capital in there at $1.5 million for the 5 years. So no, it includes everything as far as what we believe is going to happen in the next 5 years.
Okay, so for example, fiscal year 28, you projected a 9.69% increase for the average homeowner, which was $849. So that includes the standard tax increase that we see every year?
Yes.
No, hang on. That's she's reading from page 3,
She's
the average
page
near
3.
only.
Average.
So the
minimum.
849 you referenced is for a 2-grade school in FY 28 on a 900K assessment solely for Neary.
Okay, but that's what I was trying to ask, is that the tax increases that you are predicting do not include the normal municipal costs that we pay for taxes and that we are.
There's
You
two
can go in both
different,
ways.
yeah.
There's 2 different calculations.
there's two scenarios that Kathy walked through.
So
So
Patty, you can look at the 5-year spreadsheet.
Andrew, why don't you
Put it
pull it
back
back
up.
up if you can?
Can you put that back up on the screen?
Yeah,
By
Andrew's
chance?
working on it. Yep, he's working on it. So start with the fully loaded budget. So this includes assumptions outside of the Neary project, Patty.
Okay, so Patty, this does include all other normal increases year over year. This is not just reflecting the addition of the Neary bond debt service. This is everything. For example, look at the school budgets, see how that's going up. That's a normal increase in the school operating costs. Look at the town budget, starting with the $15 million right there. So yes, we've included everything that we normally would include in a year-over-year budget increase.
Okay, so what was Jason referring to that I was looking at the wrong thing? I was looking over on the right-hand side.
Yeah, so now Kathy was referring, you two were talking on 2 different slides. So what we now have up on the screen is the number you referenced, which this is Neary only.
No, okay, so
That,
Patty,
right.
you just go 4 lines down, that's the taxes going across, start at 12,951. That's the average tax bill for a house that costs almost $900,000. Then go 2 lines below, we're now trying to carve out the piece of that is because of the Neary debt. But 2 lines above, that's your total tax bill. For a.
So wait a minute, so let's just look at the first year that it's gonna hit is, well, 27 or let's just look at 28.
Okay.
So if you're leaning toward the 4-grade school, so that 9.69% increase is inclusive of what our standard tax increase would be? I'm sorry, I'm just not clear. I'm sorry.
Yes, definitely.
11.
That's all in, that's everything else too. That's what your tax bill should look like if everything you projected comes true.
So, for example, could you remind me what our percentage increase this past year was in our taxes?
4.04%.
So you're looking at a net of 5 point something percent for fiscal year 28, just for the school. Is that the way I should assume it?
No, because you got the library in there too, so you gotta be careful. There's other things going through this that are going to affect your taxes. So let me just say this, without the Neary project in there, the taxes for the next 5 years still have significant increases in them, more than just the 4%.
Patty, you could just back out the 128, the 586, 1117 from totals, and that'll give you the percent.
I mean,
Say
but
that
dollar,
again, Amber, please. I'm just trying to understand what the exact cost per year for how much this is going to affect our taxes just in the cost per year for the school.
go down the
Okay,
road.
so stay on that one. You can go back into.
Oh, let's go to debt service first.
Alright.
So Patty, here's the debt service. This is the cost of the school on the bottom line. 500, 2.3, 4.4, 4.8, 4.8. For a 4-grade school, and then the 2-grade school is a little bit less, right? And that's baked into that total $8.6 million, $86 million number there. In FY 30, and in this one, the $87 million number.
I think what she's trying to understand is what is the cost of the debt just to her, and on that
Okay,
page,
so
on
go-
the
go
next
back.
page down, just the cost of the debt in 28 is $1,117 to the average taxpayer in FY 28, and then in FY 29, the average taxpayer just for the debt will be $1,207.
Of the average tax bill of $18,300, $1,200 of that is from the school.
Yeah.
Of the projected tax bill for fiscal year 29. Okay,
Per-
but
per-
I guess I was just trying to understand the 9.69%.
That's the year over year. That's from the 15,850 to the 17,384.
So Patty,
Total
you're
tax.
not gonna get a tax increase on top of that. I know where you're going. That includes everything. The normal increases with operations, the library debt service, that's all baked into that 9.69 and Mary.
Okay, that I think is essentially what I was trying to ask is you're telling me, you know, $1,117 additional fiscal year 28. But when I get to fiscal year 28 to pay those taxes, is there additional because of the standard municipal services? But I think what Kathy is saying is that no, because then it would say, I'm sorry, I'm just not clear on this.
So let me
Then it would
try.
say bill Neary debt only. It wouldn't say Neary debt only.
Yeah, so if the town's budget stayed flat till FY 28, and nothing else changed, your tax bill would go up 1117 if we approved an $84 million cost for a 4-grade Neary school in
Okay.
that 1 year.
We know it's not going to stay flat. So
Okay, right, so
essentially
then,
that $1,117 is the minimum.
correct. So
But
then,
you don't have a way to estimate what we're really going to pay.
so they have tried that with some, I'll call it, in my opinion, conservative assumptions of town operating budgets, other projects they're aware of. That's the reason you see year-over-year increases leading up to FY 28. So look at the 1488, the 1411. Those are all driven primarily by non-Neary related costs.
So Patty, sticking on fiscal year 28, if your house was worth $892,000, you'd pay $17,384 in taxes. Of that, 1117 is due to servicing the Neary debt. The other 16,000 is for everything else.
And when you figure out these year increases, are you also taking into account an increase in like property values, which would mean the assessment would go up? So
Yes.
a house that's worth $800,000 today is going to be worth, I don't know, 1.2 in fiscal year 28. So you're going to pay taxes on 1.2 versus 800,000, right?
Yeah, but not to get into the nuances here. Remember, if everybody's value goes up, it doesn't change your taxes. It's when yours goes up more than everybody else's is when you pay more taxes. So don't get too hung up on the fact that your house value will increase over the 5 years. As long as everybody else's does too, you're still fine.
Okay.
All right. We're gonna go to him, I'm assuming it's playing, but I'll let him introduce himself.
Tim Bling,
Tim.
18 Main Street. I had two questions. Jason, you talked about the birth rate looks, I know that there was a study done before. What is the most recent study on the birth rate projections and in the move-in to town? 'Cause I know that in 2022, that was the first year in about 50 years, there was actually a birth rate increase. And I don't know if I've seen any documents publicly shared that also show that.
We have not done.
It's done in the fall of 2023.
Did you hear Greg, fall of 2023?
Okay, so is there a document that has been posted or shared that has that information in it that is accessible?
It's in the budget book, right?
Yeah.
So Tim, if you go to the advisory page on the website and go to the detailed budgets in there, it should be within the K-8 budget book.
We'll pull it out and put it on the Neary website. But there has not been a new demography, RLS demography study done.
Just the NASDAQ.
Yeah, just, yeah.
Okay, yeah, my point to that question was COVID affected a lot of things and just making sure that the exodus of the city to the further west communities or further out of the city communities is being looked at well for what the school would need. So once I look at that or see it, I'll feel a little bit more comfortable there. And then to get to the numbers that are being talked about today from what was cut last week, can you talk about what was cut? You said square footage, but was there anything else that's being moved to a different budget? Is there anything besides like classroom sizes, or can you just talk a little bit more about what specifically was reduced to get the square footage down?
So just to clarify in timeline, and I'll welcome others to weigh in, is the square footage cuts were about 1 to 2 months ago. What has happened in the last 2 weeks is the committee landed on comfort around where the square footage was, and it actually went to a formal cost estimator. What we were doing up until that point was making some very high level assumptions, trying not to be too aggressive and lower the cost too much without data to support it. So we were taking some very conservative assumptions. There were some committee members that were very vocal that we weren't being aggressive enough with the assumptions, but now we have real data from a cost estimator, which came out of the square footage process. So the square footage process was at least a month ago at this point, and then it went out to a formal cost estimator, and then it got put into a reimbursement formula. Until you had the data from the cost estimator, you were guessing of how the reimbursement formula would work. So,
Okay, but,
do you want to weigh in?
yeah,
more?
I do, of
Yeah.
course. So we did cut down square footage, but we also cut out the auditorium. So that was a big thing to make a decision on. Auditorium went. And then we were able to actually, Jim Burrows was able to truly take a look at what he thought the soft cost percentage was of the total construction costs. We had used 25% as our starting point as a very conservative estimate. So that came down to 22% and change. So on a big amount of money, that's still a lot of money. Then we also were able to fill out the form that showed what we thought the reimbursement from the state was going to be. And we started with 18% for that. Now that's going to be, dependent on the four-year school, it's going to be about 25%. So that's a big change too. So there was just a variety of things we did to truly do everything we could to get this cost down. And believe me, for those listening, we've tried everything we can to get the school that the education team wants, but lower the cost as much as we possibly can.
Kathy, just to add, the auditorium is not reimbursable from the MSBA, correct?
Right. So we wouldn't have got anything that we'd have to do that. So we agreed to knock that out.
And I think just so everyone's aware, to fully answer that question, the movement of the project, which Mark referenced from abutting the conservation land that was gonna have to remove fill truckloads and truckloads, moving that back to the existing footprint, started cutting a lot off of some of the allowances around site costs. And in addition, the decision to transition students out of that building for the 2-year period is going to cut, we believe, at least 6 months off of the construction cycle, which is 6 months less of general conditions, otherwise known as overhead. So again, to secure the site, which just became a lot. simpler and easier, regardless of renovation versus new. That answer your question, Tim? You want me?
Oh, sorry, yeah, I was on mute. Yes, mostly. So one of my follow-ups is, was there anything moved to another budget? Doesn't sound like anything moved to a future budget to be voted on.
Not related to schools, no.
Okay. And then the last one is like, so are we talking about the numbers now? Or have we shifted the way we talk about the numbers to be what is the reimbursed rate versus what is the total project cost? Kind of sounds like we're talking that way, which also makes it sound less. Is that true?
Yeah, the reimbursable cost is what all the budget projections that Kathy and Andrew and team talked about. The total cost is what we will vote on at town meeting. Because as you could probably see in one of the caveats is the ultimate reimbursement from the state, which hopefully will be even more favorable than what we're at today, is subject to a final audit at the back end. So you don't know your true total cost that we end up bonding until the project is done, right? We also have contingencies in our number that hopefully we never have to use, and that hopefully just drops savings. And it's important that everyone realize that regardless of the number we authorize, the treasurer will only bond what we spend. So, right, so the financial controls around whatever projects are critically important as well.
So C4 would be $113.4 million project at town meeting to be then reimbursed at a certain rate that the final details get worked out. But the number that would come to town meeting would be the $113.4 million.
Yeah, Jim, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, MSBA requires that the full project is voted on, and that's the value that's appropriate.
Okay, that covers my questions. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Tim. Patty, is your hand still up or did you just not take it down? It's down. All right, are there any other questions online or in the room?
One other follow-up question.
Right.
Just a quick glance at the numbers and I understand the bigger picture here. So it looks like the average tax rate is going to increase basically 50% in 5 years. And I don't know if there's a way to avoid that, but I'm wondering if there's anything happening at the higher level in town to really just address that in terms of the other things. And I know the town is working really hard in all areas, but I mean, when I look at the numbers, a 50% increase in 5 years in the tax rate has got to give the town meeting pause, I would think.
So, Kathy, I know you and Andrew really want to answer that, but I think that's outside the bounds of this committee. So you have your select board chair, your advisory chair, town administrator, town treasurer here. I think it's a phenomenal question for all of them, but I think that's an agenda item you should all take up through.
Your concerns are shared and they're being actively worked on.
Yeah.
Anyone else in the room before I bring one more person over? I got 2 online. All right, Andrea, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Ken.
Okay, Andrea Hamilton, 119 Northborough Road. So I have just 2 budget line item questions that I think have come up in the committee meetings. I'm just curious if they're in the numbers or not. So one is the cost to Woodward for any renovations to turn it into a pre-K to 1 school. And I guess a follow-up question to that is, when would those renovations happen? I'll have a kid that's there all 4 years that they would be in Woodward. And so I'm just wondering if he's going to be in construction during that. And then the second one is fields. I think fields were taken out and put under a separate budget in the last meeting. So I'm just wondering if we have rough estimates for that and how those will be treated.
So I'll go out of order. So there's no enhancements or really little disruption to the existing fields. There may be construction trailers within that site, but the site that we are looking at includes a playground. It does not include enhancements or anything to, I guess, the existing softball field and soccer field. We have let the recreation director know, he's 1 month, 2 months into his time at the town. to think about what the vision of rec is, but they also have a lot of other programs that, again, would fall in their purview to bring something forward. So it's not in any budget, I guess, would be the answer to that particular question. But we also expect minimal disruption, other than they're gonna be closed for the time period of construction. So that's the answer to that question, Andrea. The first question is our understanding based on the Aero Street team's review of Woodward is there's not much that would need to be done to make that building appropriate. I think depending upon whether pre-K goes to that building or not, I think may change how that's done, but right now, the scope of at least any discussions that I've been party to have been really related to plumbing and the height of fixtures more than anything else. So our goal, as you could tell, and welcome Aero Street and Superintendent Dwayne, is no disruption to the schools that we will be using. So if there was something that needed to be done, it would happen either after Neary is done with construction, or if able to be done during school vacations would be the intent there. Remember, we will still have Finn and be able to operate Finn if something more significant was needed for a short period of time. Greg, anything to add on that? Aero Street? Okay, Andrew, you good?
Where would pre-K go if not to Woodward?
Right,
So we're investigating other locations. We're looking at potentially Algonquin, we're looking at other options for pre-K.
Okay.
Any other questions in the room? Any other questions online? Okay. Does anyone have a motion?
I'll make a motion to bring forth to the NSBA the new four-year school option, which is C.4.
Second.
Just because of the importance of the motion, you said a four-year school. And
Or grade school, sorry, I've got lots of comments. Or grade school option C.4.
We need to put any numbers on that, or just that, the number.
So we have motions been made and seconded, we'll go to discussion. Aero Street team, does that in Skanska, does that motion satisfy what you need?
Yes.
Because we're then gonna have to take a second in about 2 weeks. On the formal document that's gonna be prepared that will include all the cost of the figures, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. We're in discussion on that. I don't have to do it, but I am gonna do a roll call vote just for due to the importance of it, so I'm just gonna start at that end of the table. Andrew?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Roger?
Aye.
Denise?
Aye.
I am I.
Aye.
Chris is aye, so it's unanimous vote 7-0. Thank you for that. Done public comments. So in terms of meeting schedule, we will send out reminders. We should get a document on Friday for review. Still on track for that. Yes. We will cancel our meeting for Wednesday because that is no longer needed based on the vote. You'll have about 7 days to review the document and then we will convene the week of the 26th. I will also, we had put a placeholder for a virtual, like for some sort of open forum for the community to catch people up. So I think we should decide when the right timing is for that, either right before school starts or right after. Depending on our submission. And I believe Greg is also gonna have some updates with the school faculty and staff as they come back as well. So to be determined on that. Obviously, if you public have any views of what you think people need to hear more about as we move forward, we certainly want to hear it, you know it. Okay, so any other business for tonight?
Jason, just, I haven't seen the comments from MSBA yet. Is that gonna be circulated around
On the PDP?
Yeah,
on the PDP?
yeah, so that's a required piece that we have to submit as part of the PSR, so you'll be able to review it there.
All right, and then the results from the soils testing at
That's part of August 22nd.
August
is when they're
22nd,
doing the drilling. Send you an email.
Good. Okay. I'll make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. We'll do just a hand raise vote on this. All in favor?
All right.
All right. Thank you everyone for coming tonight.